Welcome, everybody. I'm Deborah Tomlinson with Inside the Vatican Pilgrimages. It's good to be with everybody again. It's been a while. Advent is over. The season of Christmas is finished. We're now in ordinary time as we wait Lent. And it's almost the middle of January. Hard to believe in a new year, 2021. So this is the first time we've been together this year in 2021, and it's good to be back. Our schedule is lighter, as you probably noticed, than it was before the new year. And that's simply because we have some other things that we were working on, but we will be continuing to build out the schedule and offer some virtual pilgrimages, a few each month. And we're glad to have you with us on each of those. Mary, is Jan on with us?
He is.
Jan, are you? Hi, Jan.
Yes, hi, Deb.
Good to be with you again, Jan.
Likewise, and good to be back, and a Happy New Year to everyone still.
Happy New Year to you as well. Well, I think we shall begin.
Very good.
So, Jan, today we're going to, am I sharing? Was I sharing?
No, not yet.
Oh.
Just see you.
You see me.
Deb, could I say one thing?
Of course you can.
You know, just grateful and thankful to see, some 40 people here, the first of these pilgrimages in the new year. All of us are concerned about our country and about our church. And it was great to have the rosary with Mary. Thank you, Mary. Wonderful job, and everyone. And we all hope for sweet reason, for peace, and for faith, hope, love in our world. We have to redouble our own efforts because there are many unreasonable and unfaithful and unloving things happening. So thank you for all coming. This is, of course, our effort in everything we do, writing and in having these pilgrimages, and we hope to be able to continue. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bob. And yes, thank you, Mary, for leading the pilgrimage and to all the ones who recited a decade of the Rosary. All right, so I think now we'll begin.
Very good.
I'm
so
sharing now.
Yes, now we can see it perfect. So again, welcome everyone. And as Bob already said, I think the best thing to do is to distract oneself, and there's nothing really better to distract oneself than with some pieces of beautiful art. So I think we're going to start with a bang this year and this pilgrimage. We're not going to visit a church this time, but we will visit a place with many religious paintings. We're going to start, as always, our travels to Italy, to Rome, and more specifically this time to the north of Rome, to the Villa Borghese, which is named after the famous Italian family, the Borghese family. So you can see it here on the map where Rome is, right? You have the highway all around it, the nice little yellow street that kind of is the circle of Rome's border, and then you have Vatican City, and you have the Villa Borghese a little bit north. Now, the Villa Borghese is actually located in the middle of the Borghese Park, which is one of the most beautiful places in Rome to take a walk if you actually want to see some green space. As you can imagine, in a city that has grown over 2,000 years, there's not much space for trees and such, especially in the historic inner city. There's a few pine trees and a couple of gardens, sure, but not really a park, like, I don't know. So the Villa Borghese can be compared, I guess, with Central Park in New York. That is just this green heart in the middle of Rome, and it is really a nice place to take a walk. And as you can see, and obviously Deborah will always do this. She will put on her sneakers and she will go from the Vatican to the Borghese Gallery. I would myself take a bus, but we can all walk there. So we're going to enter the Borghese, and you can see that the Galleria, so the gallery, is right in the middle. Well, I mean at the border, but still right in the middle of that green little heart. And that is the reason for that is that it belonged to the Borghese family. Now, the gallery was set up by the Borghese family, more specifically by Pope Paul V. And Pope Paul V lived at the same time when the gallery was built and was put together in this beautiful building. This is the Quirinial Palace, which is named after the hill, the Quirinial Hill, which is named after Quirinius, which is one of the city gods of Rome, supposedly also in connection with Romulus's ascension to become a god. So a very important place, either case. And so this is a beautiful building that was built by Gregory XIII in 1583, so just at the end of the Renaissance, and was in fact home to 30 popes. So you remember the Lateran Church, which was the first papal residence, and you obviously do know about the Vatican, which is up till this day, the papal residence. But in the end of the Renaissance, and especially in the Baroque era, the Quirinial Palace was yet another residence of the popes. And there we have our completed 3 major residences of the Pope. So first the Lateran, eventually they moved to the Quirinial Palace, and then, as you know, to Vatican City, where Pope Francis, up to this day, resides. Now, the Quirinial Palace was a public space that it was a private palace in a public space where Paul V would have many, many important guests, but it would also be subject to a very strict court etiquette. Okay, and that means you have to dress in a certain way, you have to walk in a certain way, you have to talk in a certain way, you have to not make eye contact in a certain way, you're always surrounded by people, you're always in public, and whatever you say, okay, will be listened to by many, many ears. So Paul V understood that his guests will need a break, okay? No one can do that. No one can live all day long in, I don't know, the White House, okay, or the Senate, okay? That this doesn't work. You need some break. And in order to take that break, he commissioned his nephew, Cardinal Scipione Borghese, to build the Villa Borghese. Now, that was supposed to be, so the Villa Borghese is basically a retreat, a house, okay? It's a place that is in green, it is in a park that is far away from the public life, and that's where the guests could actually take a break, okay? So for their coffee break, for their lunch break, before and after diplomatic business, they would walk from the Quirinial Palace to the Villa Borghese, and then they would spend the time there. And that was a much nicer place. It was private, there was no one around, and Scipione Borghese, the cardinal and nephew of Paul V, was very happy to entertain. And Scipione Borghese did have an amazing, I mean, unparalleled eye for good art. He discovered Bernini, he discovered Caravaggio, he collected every major painter of his time. And that's what we see in the Villa Borghese today. So we can move on to the actual building of the Villa Borghese, where you can see we basically have to walk towards it. We pick up our tickets on the left on that little gate, and then we go up that beautiful staircase to enter the building. Before we do that, we can take a walk around, and you can really see how it is supposed to be a getaway. It's supposed to be like a little vacation, a little holiday home, if you will, obviously in papal scale. So Scipione Borghese, he would pick you up from the Quirinial Palace, he'd walk you over here, he'd walk you through the gardens, and then he would pop inside the villa to show off his incredible art collection. Now, the whole villa, every room is packed, I mean packed, with beautiful art. So it is, I mean, we can have a long series of visits, but today I really picked all of the most important works of art that are not by Bernini, okay? The reason for that is we will have a second part to this tour, which will be all of these sculptures of Bernini, and we'll dedicate a whole pilgrimage to that as well. Now, so if you want to enter that daily life of a cardinal, okay, in the 16th century, then there's really no better place to do that as the Villa Borghese. Now, when we enter the Villa Borghese, so when we move on to the inside, you can already see that it is really, truly a royal place. Okay, it is made by royals. It is made for royals. Only the kind of highest members of state or members of the diplomatic corps would enter here. So it's very beautiful that we can actually take a peek inside today and learn a little bit about our dear Cardinal Scipione, Scipio in English, by the way, which is good days, right? Where people still name their children Scipio, and look at his beautiful collection. There's one very important thing about the Villa Borghese, which is unique in Rome and maybe in the world, which is that Pope Paul V had a special papal edict, special papal document that would protect the gallery from being sold off or from pieces within the art collection to be sold off. And it is quite phenomenal that the gallery is almost completely intact. Now, there was a huge hiccup in his 500-year or 400-year history, which is, as everything in Rome, somewhat tainted by Napoleon. When Napoleon came to Rome, the collection was broken up, and it took about 30 years to be put back together. So in 1797, it was broken up when Napoleon came with his famous shopping list that I've mentioned on other pilgrimages. And then the collection was finally put together in 1820. Now, what is incredible is that the Borghese family in 1903, so just the turn of the century to the 20th century, lost all of their money and had to sell the Villa Borghese and the park and their chateau. And so they did that. And so today it is part of the Italian state. Now, that doesn't mean that it is broken up. The Italian state up to this point anyways has respected the integrity of the collection. And so what we see today is still part of Scipio's original collection. Now, we're going to start big. We're going to start with the ceiling of the so-called Lanfranco room, and we'll start with the Council of the Gods. And I always love that. We've seen this in the Sistine Chapel, that Catholic artists choose to depict pagan gods. And the reason why I like this is that this is not a mentality. The painters, and in this case Lanfranco, the mentality is not that you just stick to your own religious subjects, but that you understand that all of the world history somewhat revolves around Christ. So even in the ancient stories of the Greek stories or the Roman mythology or even Norse mythology, there's always some kernel of truth that somehow points your way to Christ. And we've just celebrated Epiphany, which reminds us that even the pagans could find Christ by following the logic of the world, right? By following the logic of the cosmos, of like the actual like Earth. So the star, right? Following the star, even the pagans can come to Christ. And this is, I think, kind of the idea behind someone like Scipione Borghese, who was a cardinal, choosing to depict something like the Council of the Gods, which are obviously the pagan gods, which, as we all know, do not actually exist. They're symbols. They're symbols for parts of human nature. And so I just kind of wanted to link that back in because it is always something to remember, so that we're also not stupefied by the pagan themes of some of the images. Ultimately, it is the Catholic mindset that allows Catholics to look beyond their own revelation and to see that all of the world somehow is linked back to that center that is Christ. So this is the ceiling, and this is basically just all of the gods hanging out, everyone for once with their partner, deciding on the fate of Troy, or rather the fall of Troy, right? And so this is, maybe just a little symbol of what people were doing down below on the ground as well, hanging out and deciding on the fate of, nations, right? So the gods do it, we do it. This is our daily business. All right. Well, let's meet our friend, Cardinal Scipione Borghese. who is here portrayed by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Bernini, obviously the biggest and most important artist of the Baroque time, completely unparalleled master of the arts worldwide in the mid-17th century. Now, this is a bust, naturally, and it's a statue that the good cardinal, commissioned with Bernini himself. Now, there's a very intriguing story about this bust, because what was so new about Bernini's approach? Okay, why is his sculpture so special? The reason for that is Bernini had a very different and alternative approach to finding finding the material and studying the faces of the people that he portrayed, or the things that he portrayed. So whenever he was supposed to do the face or a bust or a portrait of someone, then he would say, okay, great, well, so I'll see you tomorrow morning at breakfast. And the cardinal said, what? Why? And Bernini said, oh, I'm just going to follow you around. And the cardinal said, okay, I don't know if you can, I don't know if you want to do that. I have a lot of things in Persian. No, you go ahead and I'll follow you around. And so Bernini would follow Cardinal Borghese, and he would follow him through everything. He would go through public meetings. He would go through, I don't know, his coffee break. He would go with him to lunch. He would go and cross the street with him and, kind of follow him when he was, I don't know, yelling at the flower lady that was putting up the flowers for mass and messed up everything. And Bernini would take little sketches all throughout the day. Okay, so this is the cardinal when he is mad. This is the cardinal when he is happy. This is the cardinal when he's falling asleep at dinner. This is the cardinal when he is doing this or doing that. And he would collect these, and then he would merge them all together. And that would give a real, and almost alive representation of that face. It was a very special method, and Scipione Borghese really much appreciated it. So what we see here is a beautiful capturing of a moment when I guess the cardinal had some kind of maybe intuition or some kind of light. He was thinking about something, and some kind of illumination. His mouth is slightly open. You can see all of the facial details. You can see that they had a pretty good cook there at the Villa Borghese. Okay, and they had a very active expression, even though it's obviously made of stone, and that's what made it so lifelike. So Bernini really perfected this method, and the cardinal appreciated it. Now, with this bust, there was a problem, a huge problem. Bernini, as you know, a sculptor, needs to take lots of rock and marble away, so he started chiseling and he did the cope, and he did the buttons and all of the details. He did the hair, he did the beard, he did the beretta, and when he got to the forehead, Bernini's chisel nailed a little a vein or a little air bubble in the marble, which sometimes happens, that marble forms air bubbles. And the marble cracked right across the forehead. And that's what you see here. There's a huge cut. Looks like the cardinal got a lobotomy. Okay, huge cut over the forehead, just like that, as if someone had taken a knife and just cut. He got a nasty street fight, and he's got his forehead cut. So what happened is Bernini came, he finished it, and he brought it to the cardinal. Like, well, we got a problem. And Scipione Borghese was so sad. He obviously paid Bernini full commission. That's not the artist's fault when this happens. This has happened before. But he said, well, I guess I'll just take this imperfect sculpture. And he put it up, and he said, well, at least I have a Bernini. Not bad. So what did Bernini do? 4 weeks later, in the same year, 1632, he came to the cardinal. He brought a big box. He opened the box. And out of his own pocket, he paid for a new piece of marble that he did the sculpture one more time. So when we see now the second bust of Scipione Borghese, you can see the same perfection, the same expression, but luckily no lobotomized forehead. So this was the final statue. And with that, Bernini completely won over the heart of Cardinal Scipione Borghese, as you can imagine. He went all the way out of his way. He invested the whole time again, and at that point, the two just made an immediate and deep friendship that would last a lifetime. So you can see the combination here. So you have the lobotomized head, and you have the second bust. It's a little bit, the color of the two is a little bit different just because of the time and the aging. This one is a little bit more dirty. And so in the villa, they're set up right next to each other. So you can really see at the same time the perfection of the artist, but also the unfortunate air bubble. So that happens to even the best. Now, Bernini was brought to the Pope, to Pope Paul V, at a very young age. And so we have a couple of self-portraits of Bernini in the Borghese Gallery. One of them shows him very, very young, almost as a child. And we actually only say it's Bernini. We don't know, but he does look very similar. So this is a very, very young Bernini. And then we have Bernini when he is about 25. And when he was 25, this was the time, this is Bernini, when he was working on the Baldacchino of St. Peter's Basilica. Now, Bernini was probably with about 15, was brought to Paul V by Scipione Borghese, and he said, and the cardinal, introduced him to his uncle. He said, this is the Pope, and, the little boy is like, oh, adolescent, very probably not really sure what he's supposed to say to His Holiness, and kind of like, kind of freaking out, and probably, having like picking his fingernails, standing in front of His Holiness. And Paul V was very gracious. He said, so, I heard great things of you. And this boy's like, yeah, And he's like, well, do something, draw something. And so Bernini took out his pen and with shaking hands, he started sketching St. Paul from memory, because Paul V, right? So he sketched St. Paul, but he chose to do a 3/4 perspective. So which means that it's not a frontal view onto the face. It's not a profile either, but it's like 3/4. Okay, so you can see the side of the face and the front of the face, which is the hardest to draw. It's the hardest angle because you have to foreshorten the face. You have to have the whole face in it, but it's just very difficult to do. And he did it on the spot. And the Pope said, okay, you're going to be my Michelangelo. Right? What Michelangelo was for Julius II, Bernini would be for Paul V. And henceforth, for the next 20 years, he organized all of the arts in Rome. He did everything. He did reorganization of existing collections. He did tons of commissions. He did tons of sculptures. He did tons of work outside, right? The four river fountain that we've seen previously, and many, many things, altar pieces, everything. And so 20 years later, then he would become the unchallenged master of all art in the world. I mean, and I think I said this on previous tours, people killed each other off to just go one more notch up on the waiting list to be able to commission something with Bernini. Okay, it's that bad. I mean, like the princes are poisoning each other to have Bernini do their bust. So Scipione Borghese had an early in, so that was very good for him. And so that is as the story unfolds. Now, young Bernini, we have tons of stuff in the Borghese, and again, we'll dedicate a whole second part to Bernini. I do want to bring one more thing to your attention, which is a statue that he made of the goat Amalthea with Jupiter and a fawn. And as you know, many of the pagan god families were dysfunctional. Okay, Kronos ate his own children. Okay, I mean that's problematic. So the mother of Jupiter gave him away, and he said, "Well, you're gonna grow up with a goat. Okay, that's much more safe than growing up with your dad." And so that's the kind of cute scene that Bernini picks. And so you have the fawn and Jupiter drinking the goat's milk from Amalthea. What is amazing is there are two things here that we can study. Number one is, as an early aspiring artist, especially a sculptor, you would never get a piece of marble that is higher than it is wide. Okay. Simple reason. If you miscalculate and you mess up, it will fall over. So you would always get a piece that is rectangular that you use as a table piece. And you would put it on the table, okay? No matter what you do, no matter if you mess up, I mean, if you mess up really hard, I guess it will still fall, but you can just put it up. And so that's what you see. You can see the base, and then you have the goat and the two children, the two babies, the two infants, toddlers, I guess. And this was a very classic. This will come back to us. I'm not just mentioning this. This will come back to us because all of the statues that we have by Bernini in the Borghese Gallery defy gravity. Okay, all of them are just amazing examples of absolutely perfect balance. Now, in retrospect, we know that Bernini could do it, but again, if you give like a 90-year-old a piece of marble, you're maybe not so sure if he can manage. So, anyways, so this is the goat. What is I think what's most amazing, and this is something that we'll come back to, is the different surfaces that Bernini gets out of one piece of marble, because the shaggy coat of the goat is rough and looks rough and looks very hairy, and then you have the very nicely polished side of the baby, right, of Jupiter's side, that looks glossy and soft and warm, and it's right next to one another, right? So you can see this is the same piece of marble. I mean, it's one piece of marble. So it's beautiful how Bernini was able to contrast those two kind of surfaces, and we'll see this again next week, or the next pilgrimage rather. Very good. Now there's one more pagan image that I want to show you, just because it's a Leonardo da Vinci, and I do not like to pass by a da Vinci and not point it out. So here you have it. It's Leonardo da Vinci, and it's called Leda and the Swan. And the story is very simple. It's Zeus in the form of a swan goes to Leda and gets her pregnant, as many Roman gods do, right? They have nothing better else to do. So Leda becomes pregnant with twins that apparently she hatches from an egg. And so this is the story. Now, again, I don't really find the mythology here particularly important, but it's a Leonardo da Vinci, so I wanted to show you the Leonardo da Vinci. What I prefer going to is the Raphael Room, and here we have a very beautiful religious piece we passed by. So it's not the Raphael Room in that sense as it is in the Vatican, but it is a room full of Raphael paintings. So we have on the one hand we have Julius II, and Julius II, you should remember from the Vatican Museums tour, I explained to you that he was the one that commissioned Raphael. And then in the middle, you have the Deposition of Christ. And the Deposition of Christ was the painting that made Raphael be a contester for the Raphael Rooms. If you're a painter in Rome, especially in Renaissance Rome, you want to get it in with the popes, you need to show that you got the skills. And so the Deposition was one of the early Raphael paintings, which is from 1507. And with that, Raphael really showed that he had the skills to be employed in the Vatican. So let's pass by Julius II in this very pensive portrait that is by Raphael, and you maybe recall this. I've showed this to you before, but also maybe you're just familiar with his painting in general. This is a very famous and the most famous portrait of Julius II by Raphael. And we're moving on to the Deposition of Christ, sometimes also called the Lamentation. Now, here we have a beautiful religious theme. Naturally, it's the moment when Christ gets taken off the cross and is carried to the tomb. And what I like about it is that you can see at the same time the aspirations of Raphael of being really one of the big artists, the big shots in Rome, but at the same time also the technical imperfections and some of the really intriguing kind of theological winks of Raphael that he enables his viewer to see. So this is Christ that is taken from the cross. You can see the cross in the background, right? There's a kind of a classic northern Italian landscape, and then he's brought into the tomb. You can see the hewn tomb in the background on the left. and there's a dark kind of rock. So that's where Christ is transferred to. And so the center of this whole, I mean, I would say a very dynamic painting, is the two hands touching, the hand of Jesus and the hand of his mother, of Mary, right, touching in the middle. And it's like a yin yang, right? And it's very interesting too that you have the very kind of alive skin of Mary, and sorry, not his mother. I'm sorry, Mary Magdalene. Obviously, his mother's in the background.
Yeah.
Pardon me. So Mary Magdalene's hand kind of reaching up Christ's hand, and it's very alive, and it has this kind of rosy color, and then Christ's hand being white and pale. And so that touching, somewhat like the touching of heaven and earth, right? It unites this whole scene. So the Virgin Mary, his mother, with a blue veil on the right background, is held up by three ladies, maybe angels, who is fainting, right? She's fainting. She can't take the pain, right? Her heart is pierced with the swords, as the prophecy said. And so you have the two Marys reacting, right? And we've seen this in the Caravaggio tour, right? So we have seen a similar thing. Mary as being kind of phasing out, the Virgin Mary, and Mary Magdalene being actively participating in the pain, in the pain of death of Christ, right? And Christ's lifeless body being, I would say, being hauled over to the tomb. It's very interesting that Raphael, he kind of ran out of options because so many depositions had already been painted, that he had to come up with a kind of a new way of doing it if he wanted kind of any fame. So he chose this extremely dynamic composition where the body just seems extremely heavy. Okay, everyone that's helping just needs all of their muscles, all of their kind of strength to kind of lift that body up. And it's very different. Later on, you have paintings where the body of Christ is almost ethereal and very light. But here, you're supposed to feel the weight of it. So yeah. Now I talked about technical imperfections. I can just maybe point out one that maybe you don't really see at first glance, but it is quite evident when you think about it, which is St. Peter. St. Peter's in the back. He is right next to Mary Magdalene, kind of leaning towards Mary Magdalene, bearded face, gray hair, okay, kind of scruff looking. He wears a green and yellow toga, and his upper body is very well placed between John and Mary Magdalene, but his lower body is standing like in a twisted position. And those two parts of the body do not go together. Like St. Peter would really kind of twist his hip in order to stand like he's standing. But that's okay. It doesn't matter. But we've had this before at the Pietà. The artist has that kind of freedom, right? He doesn't. It's not so important. You wouldn't have probably recognized it, but if you do analyze it and you're very meticulous about it, then you could point out that imperfection. Anyways, so this is it's a beautiful, very beautiful meditation on a scene that is so central to the history of Christ and really a moment of despair, right? And we should also, in our time, Bob talked about this in the beginning. There are moments where everything seems hopeless, right? And these are all of the people, all of the apostles, Mary Magdalene, everyone, like Mary Magdalene, right? Talk about Mary Magdalene, who left everything. She followed this man. She believed what he said. She was, weeks before, she was cleaning his feet with her hair because she realized that he was God, and now he's dead in her arms, right? The apostles who have left everything, who are in the cenacle, abandoned. Everyone is looking for them. Everyone is persecuting them. Everyone is like, these are the crazies that followed that crazy man, and we will hunt them down and we will punish them for it, right? The Romans and the Jews, both. So, but this is just the moment that we know now in retrospect, where then the resurrection will appear. The resurrection will come just a couple of days later, but it's really the hardest moment of the faith. So I think Raphael captured that very well in his very beautiful style, right? No one is too upset in the painting, but I think you can you can feel the gravity of the sadness, I think, nonetheless. So good. So that's the Deposition. I would move on to the next room, and that is a room that is dedicated to the Venetian paintings. And then you have on the other side, you have Barocci, which we'll talk about at the very end of the tour. But this is a very famous painting by Domenichino. And I picked this painting because I think, from what we know of Cardinal Scipione Borghese, he identified himself most with the subject matter here. What are we looking at? We're looking at Diana, or rather the hunt of Diana. And we're looking at it with the eyes of a bystander. And you have to look, it's a small detail. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but on the right side of the painting, on the very far right side, in the bushes, there are two young men that are observing the scene that is going on in the center. They're very small. You can only see their heads. They're in the thickets, in the bushes. And so you can see one of them looks at Diana, and the other one looks at you and goes like this. Shh, right? So we are the secret bystanders of a scene. We are looking into something that we're not supposed to look at. So what are we looking at? If you enter the Galleria Borghese with Cardinal Scipione Borghese, you get invited into the inner sanctum. Okay, this is the closest collaborator of the Pope. This is the closest relative of the Pope that you'll probably meet. And you are really invited to his personal inner sanctum. So all of the people, this was painted for a cardinal, this is for Cardinal Aldobrandini, and Domenichino chooses a scene of Diana hunting. And who's Diana? Diana is the virgin, okay? She's unmarried, like all of the cardinals that look at it. And she is just hanging out with her girls in the forest, right? She's just doing girl stuff, like hunting, okay? And so she's there with all of her best friends and kind of entertaining time. And this is entertaining themselves and passing time. And this is exactly what the cardinals would do that are looking at this. This is what all of the guests are doing that look at this. And so what is happening is Diana plays a famous game, which is, you can see that on the right, there's a bird that's being shot. And so Diana was such a good archer that you were supposed to shoot 3 arrows. And so the first one is you shoot it at a stake at which like a wild bird is tied to. The second, you have to hit the rope to free the bird. So the bird would flutter away. And then the third arrow needs to kill the bird. And so Diana, because she's so amazing, she did it. And so she's celebrating, right? She's in the celebratory pose, and the bird is in the moment of falling. So far, so good. Now, what happens to those to those young men who are in the bushes, right? Well, these are the company of Actaeon. Actaeon also chose to hunt on the same day that Diana had her little girl party in the middle of the forest, and so he stumbled upon Diana, and saw what was going on, and so Diana turned him into a deer for her other lady friends to hunt down. And so they were kind of running through the forest and chasing this deer. And all of the friends of Actaeon were watching this, like, man, Actaeon would love this. I bet, where is he anyways? And so they eventually shoot down the deer. And so you can see underneath the dead bird, you can see the 2 young ladies carrying that deer back to Diana. And that is, in fact, Actaeon in a deer form. So this is also a gentle reminder of Cardinal Scipione Borghese that you don't mess around with papal secrets, right? If you're looking into something that you're not supposed to look at, that's gonna be your end. So again, those and many other reasons make it seem like the cardinal would have very much liked this subject. Anyways, I'm going to check the chat just to see if there's any questions up to this point. Okay, Lisa, thank you, Bob, for typing up some things. Yep, Deposition. That's right. So you will be the first one to see him on Easter morning. Very good.
Mhm.
All right. Now let's look at the arguably most important piece of art in the whole gallery. This is Titian, or Tiziano, Vecellio Tiziano, as the Italians call him, but Titian, you may recognize his name. Titian is the guy who really enables oil painting a breakthrough in Rome. Okay, and so it's up to the point where there are artists that are so good at tempera or whatever, but their work just does not get sold because it's not oil. Okay, Michelangelo would have been asked like, oh yeah, so nice Sistine Chapel, but do you paint in oil? Right. So Titian made that happen. Titian made oil painting famous, and so he paints this painting, which is called The Sacred and Profane Love. And so I'm going to ask, I don't know, Deb or Bob or Mary, the question that I ask all of my students when I show him this painting. And the question is, which one is sacred love and which one is profane love?
It's hard to say.
Take a guess.
Well, sacred, maybe. I don't know, Jan. Sacred clothed and profane unclothed.
Well, it is a trick question, right? So that's why I have to ask it. But it's exactly the other way around.
Yeah.
So profane love.
How could that be, Jan? Why?
Profane love is dressed, and sacred love is naked. And this is something that is very interesting to see. The left side is all about worldly things. It's about jewelry. It's about nice dresses. It's about flowers that are picked, right? Dead flowers that are picked in her hands. It's about a winding path that leads to a strong castle. It's about nobility. It's about, famous weddings, right? Princess Diana kind of stuff. Okay, so it's all about worldly pomp and glory. And it's visible. Worldly pomp is visible, right? You look at that tower and you're like, man, that castle will never be sieged. Okay, that lady really, she got the jackpot, right? Whoever she married, she is set for life. She has a horse, right? Riding up to the castle, she's good. But the lady on the left, so profane love, rests on what looks like a water basin. But if you're familiar with Roman antiques, then you may recognize that looks a lot like a sarcophagus. Yeah. She's resting on what ultimately will result in death. And you have Cupid, right, the insinuator of love. You have him steer the waters of emotions, which are very important, but they're just emotions, and the waves will flatten again. If Cupid is not, whirling around his magic staff, his magic wand, it will just flatten out, and then it will rise up again. But they're emotions; they come and they go. Who is barely sitting on the sarcophagus, and it's almost like standing up, is sacred love. And so the right side of the painting is all about eternity. It's all about that which lasts. And so first of all, the woman is naked. We are created naked. We die naked. There's nothing that you can take away. When I was a really young boy, like really young, and I remember this still, I played with Lego, and I had tons of Lego. I mean, I thought I had tons of Lego. It was a lot of Lego. I still have it. It's back home. I'll save it for when my son grows up. But always at night, I would go to bed with like my favorite Lego piece of the day, and I would hold on to it so that I can play with it in my dream. And I do this, and then next morning I would, probably wake up and have rolled over and have to rebuild it. That's fine, it's Lego. So that's the fun about it, right? But I took it and I tried to take it with me to the other world, right? To that world that I cannot control. I cannot control what I can dream about, but I tried. And that's the pomp and the circumstance, right? The castle is going to eventually fall apart. Rome is full of ruins. The clothes will be eaten by moths. The money will be worthless at some point. the beauty of that lady will fade, and the emotions will go away. So the only thing that lasts is the eternal flame. And so the eternal flame of faith is what the lady on the right side holds up. It's a tiny, and if you look closely, it's a tiny black oil lamp that resembles very closely what they would put up in the catacombs, right? For the dead, little oil lamps to have light through the darkness. The landscape is not closed, it's flat, and you can see the horizon. What's the horizon? The horizon is the place where Earth touches the sky, the heavens, right? So you have the sunrise of a new day, and what is in the middle of it? A church spire. So you have the flame of faith, you have the church, you have the new day of Christ, and using pagan mythology, you have, and this is a very small detail, so I'm sure that many of you cannot see it well, but that's okay. I can explain it. In the middle, there is a dog chasing a rabbit. About on the same height, where on the other side, where profane love is, there are two rabbits. Now, as you can maybe recognize, what are rabbits really famous for? That's right, doing rabbit things. The dog is a sign of fidelity. And on the left side, there are two rabbits. And on the right side, there's a dog chasing a rabbit. Fidelity that wants to stay true and that ultimately conquers pure emotions and pure sentimentality. And that because fidelity lasts. So it's faith and the hope to that new day that identify the right side and therefore sacred love. Now, there's a very famous story that in the end of the 19th century, in the 1890s, the Rothschild family wanted to buy this painting, this Titian painting. It's about 2 meters, so it's about like 4 feet wide and maybe like 3 feet high. And they wanted to buy it, and they offered more money for this Titian painting than all of the gallery, the grounds, and all of the artworks are worth together. And the Italians did not sell it. It's absolutely incredible. It is really borderline miraculous that they stuck to that original edict of Pope Paul V to not break up this collection, that they did not sell this to the Rothschilds. Very, very famous story. So anyways, sacred and profane love, very, very beloved by many. So when we pass by now, we have also a very famous subject. It's not so religious, but it's a cute one, and it is by the Roman schools, by a couple of sculptors, or we at least don't know the exact one, the so-called cava spina, so the boy with the thorn. And so it's a famous image that is, also repeated in many galleries where there's a young boy picking a thorn from his feet. Anyways, very good. We go on, and I just want to just very briefly brush by Paulina Borghese. This is a Canova sculptor, and this is not ancient. That's why I wanted to show to you, because it is actually from the mid 1800s, so 1820s, so it's not that old. It's like 150 years old, which is, I think, amazing, because he is the last Roman sculptor that has that kind of skill. This was never supposed to be on public display. This is Paulina Bonaparte, so the daughter of Napoleon, or the niece of Napoleon, who lived in Rome, and she met Canova, and she wanted to be painted in the nude. And Canova was like, no, I want to paint you with clothes on, and I want to paint you as Diana, and because girl power. And she said, no, I want to be Venus, and I want to be naked. So she got undressed, and she laid there, and Canova did his thing. But it's a beautiful sculpture, and I think what's most impressive about this actually is not Paulina herself, but the cushion. Okay, this seems but that just looks like an amazingly comfortable couch. Mm-hmm. If I can lay on that couch after this pilgrimage, I'll be so happy, because it just looks incredibly comfortable. And considering that this is a piece of solid marble, I think that's impressive. Okay, so that's just my personal take, but good. Let's go to the last big painting that we can look at before we wrap up, and this is the fleeing from Troy by Aeneas. And this is a famous painter of the Baroque Barocci. And Barocci is very, very famous for this, I would say, maybe blotchy painting style, where it's all like more hues of color rather than straight lines. But Scipione Borghese always commented on this. This was one of his favorite subjects. And this will be a great anchor for the next part of the tour, because Bernini does the same subject matter in marble as a statue. The fleeing of Troy was always representative of keeping the values of tradition. And this is Aeneas that saves his father and his son from the burning Troy that you can see in the background. And the father, Anchises, has the family gods in his hand. So it's a beautiful representation of taking what has been given to you by your father and hand it on to the next generation. In this case, to Aeneas' son, Ascanius, right? So it is something that you hold, that you uphold and pass on. And the name Scipio, or Scipione in Italian, the name of the cardinal, means that which upholds. And so Cardinal Scipione Borghese certainly saw himself as someone who upholds the values of the papacy, the values of his own uncle, and the values, obviously, of the head of the church. So all of the faith, right? That's what the Pope is for. The Pope's job is, the job description is hand on that which has been given to the church, right? What Christ has bestowed on the church, hand that over to the next generation of believers. Now, these are not children in the flesh, obviously, but children in spirit. Everyone who is a convert, everyone who is baptized. So this image of Aeneas fleeing from Troy was always interpreted in the wider scale as handing on tradition, that which has been given to you. And so I think this is a beautiful painting to end up with, as the last image that we can see to the left of this painting is there's a young lady looking at us. And so I always like to point her out, because Scipione Borghese was also the one that discovered her, and that is Lavinia Fontana. So you can see her here in a self-portrait. And Lavinia Fontana was one of the only women painters of the Baroque that received some kind, or got to some kind of fame in Rome. And it was due to Scipione Borghese that she could do that she was made famous. And so this is a good reminder also that he did discover many a talent. So on that note, Bob, I hand the mic over to you.